Welcome. We are about to take you on a journey back in time. This video time capsule is brought to you by the Big Butte Historical Society in Butte Falls, Oregon. We hope you will sit back and enjoy meeting some of the folks, some just like you, who helped make our town what it is today. The town of Butte Falls is known as the land of pure water, pure air, sunshine, and health. This landscape was originally etched and formed by fiery lava flows and the mighty waters from snowmelts high in the Cascade Mountain Range. The town is sited in the shadow of Mount McLaughlin, whose towering peak rises 9,500 feet, forming the beautiful backdrop for this peaceful little southern Oregon town. Residents of Butte Falls have called this mountain My Mountain for many, many years. The mountain is named after Dr. John McLaughlin, a Hudson Bay trader who was also known as the Father of Oregon. In the past, the mountain has been given names such as Snowy Butte and Mount Pitt. This area, known as Big Butte Country, attracted settlers as early as the 1860s. They came by horse and covered wagons and established local camps where they hunted, trapped, and cut sugar pine shakes, cedar posts, and cordwood. In these early days, Butte Falls was just a tent town in the tall timbers. Roads were seasonal, and wood was hauled by oxen or teams of horses to the nearby towns in southern Oregon. Early settlers filed homestead claims of up to 160 acres each. The heyday of homesteading was between 1880s and the 1920s. They built their humble dwellings and began ranching, gardening, and building their new lives among the towering firs and pines of Big Butte Country. In 1901, the Dewing Company of Michigan purchased timber and set up a small sawmill. By 1904, timber was quickly becoming king. Big Bend Milling Company built a larger sawmill adjacent to the falls. A dam was built, and water power was used to run the mill. This was the beginning of the glory days for logging in Butte Falls. In 1906, the Butte Falls Sugar Pine Company took over the site and built an even larger mill. However, the following year, the company announced bankruptcy and gave some of its land holdings to the local people who built the town, which is now Butte Falls. In 1905, Bert Harris mapped out the town, featuring a park in the center of it. The new town was to cover 55 acres with a 300-square-foot plaza surrounded by homes and businesses. It was patterned after Bert's hometown of Harvard, Illinois. On January 22, 1906, the town was dedicated and wasn't formally incorporated until August 1911. Today, the town square appearance still lends a feeling of community and unity to its approximate 425 residents. The town doesn't look much different today than it did 100 years ago. Some of the businesses that have come and gone are Pine Bell Bank, restaurants, pool halls, hardware stores, grocers, hotels, and even a shooting gallery. Groundbreaking for the Medford and Crater Lake Railroad occurred on April 4, 1905. The railroad was built to connect Butte Falls with Medford, Oregon. Large wooden trestles were built to carry trains over the hilly terrain. On November 15, 1910, after 6.5 years of construction, the first train arrived in Butte Falls. Tourists and dignitaries arrived on Pacific and Eastern's first excursion on April 4, 1911. 2 resort hotels were built between 1908 and 1915 to accommodate the many visitors to Butte Falls. The train chugged by the grade school often, interrupting many lessons. Advertisements in the newspapers featured Butte Falls as a wonderland of resorts, campgrounds, fishing spots, as well as a place to get away from the hot, dusty valley and into the cool mountain air. Townspeople anticipated rapid growth, but it never happened. Originally, the main purpose of the railroad was to open up the timber areas east of Butte Falls and to transport logs to mills in Medford. No one could foresee that these giant beasts of burden would soon be replaced by the faster, more economical logging trucks. When the trains left, it was apparent that the dream of Butte Falls becoming the sawmill center of Southern Oregon would soon be derailed. Yet timber logging and milling would be a way of life for many years. It was the center of operations for the Medford Corporation, or Medco, which worked in the area for almost 80 years before it was bought by Harold Simmons of Valhai Inc. of Dallas, Texas. We'll hear from some of the folks who worked in the woods at that time.
You know, they had charge of all the cutting the trees and getting them ready to take out. And so that is a job, and I stayed with that until the power saws came in, and I stayed 1 year after the power saws came in because I wanted to see if they worked. And it got to a place where the haulers with the power saws were making 2 or 3 times as much money as I was.
Well, you had a crotch line. It was hooked up to the loading drum on the McGifford. Then you had 2, on the crotch line, you had 2 lines coming out, one on each side. And you had end hooks, and you'd take those hooks and hook a log. There was 2 of us, one opposite the other, and Dad would pick them up and set them on the car. Kept you going all day long.
My grandmother made this to go on a round table that she had in her house for many years. And I acquired it through my mother. And the women, as I remember when I was younger, did mostly canning and taking care of their homes and sewing. My mother made our clothes for school and underwear and all of those things that had to be done, you know. And she was a canner. I mean, it was nothing to can 100 jars of peaches and pears and carrots and beans and venison. My dad was a logger, and he worked for Medco, Medford Corporation, and for many years.
Butte Falls now became an area of timber haulers and log truck drivers. In the past decade, with the help of practical forest management, the woods have continued to open its plentiful forests in many beneficial ways. For instance, the oldest commissioned warship afloat in the world, the USS Constitution, was in need of new wood for its ongoing restoration. A local contractor tromped the woods for nearly a year to find Douglas fir trees to replace the 40-foot timbers of this historic ship. It was tough to find suitable trees because of logging injunctions imposed to protect old-growth forest habitat. But he found them on former Medco and BLM areas near Butte Falls. It has been said that good people leave an inheritance to their children's children. For their willingness to work and leave the surroundings better than they had found them, a local family was named Tree Farmer of the Year by the Oregon Small Woodland Association and Oregon State Department of Forestry. Every town needs a library. In 1918, books were housed in private homes and even at City Hall. In 1990, the town's citizens became very creative. Butte Falls got its very own depot-style library and museum. Money was raised by the community, and a suitable building was located, secured, and moved by truck and trailer from Medford to its present location in the town square. Over 100 volunteers donated time, money, and labor. The beautiful library was completed in 9 short months through the efforts of many dedicated and committed volunteers. Over the past 75 years, no single factor has played a more significant role in the growth and progress of the Rogue Valley than the stable and abundant flow of its mountain spring water from Big Butte Springs. Big Butte Springs is fed by a 56,000-acre watershed adjacent to the western slope of Mount McLaughlin. Ben Franklin once said, "We will know the worth of water when the well runs dry." With the rapid growth and expansion in Medford's early days, they knew the importance of a future source for clean, dependable water was necessary, and they found it in Butte Falls. No expense was spared in the construction of the water system from Butte Falls to Medford, Oregon. In 1925, work began on the 30-mile hand-dug ditch, which would protect the pipeline filled with sparkling, crystal-clear water from the foothills of the Cascades to Medford. On July 1st, 1927, the pipeline was completed. The vision of a mountain spring in every home was realized. By 1950, a second Big Butte Springs pipeline was constructed to serve the growing needs of the valley below. In 1915, the state of Oregon established a fish hatchery just east of the town. Then in 1930, the federal government built another adjacent hatchery which shared the water source. Shortly after Roosevelt was elected, the federal hatchery closed, at which time the state took over operations. And it continues to be a state-operated hatchery today. In 1999, the hatchery was slated for closure due to diminishing budgets. However, local citizens were outraged that an important resource and historical facility was to be lost forever. A campaign to save the hatchery was spearheaded by a local citizen who helped rally support and was successful at saving the hatchery. Two local historic figures were Bill Edmondson and Ernest W. Smith. Bill carved the history of the area, while Ernest photographed it. Their lives have come together in the exhibits at the E.W. Smith House and Museum in Butte Falls. Ernest Smith was a photographer, surveyor, inventor, historian, poet, and chiropractic doctor. The E.W. Smith House was part of the early settlement of Butte Falls. Over the years, it had fallen into disrepair. Big Butte Historical Society purchased and restored the house, which is now a museum. Early town photographs by E.W. Smith and some of Edmondson's carvings are displayed. Bill Edmondson was honored as one of Oregon's outstanding woodcarvers. Many years ago, his work was on display at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. But one of his best-known works is Ralph, a life-size wooden statue that stands in the Ernest W. Smith Memorial Park. There are so many more stories about the town of Butte Falls, its people and history, its beautiful surroundings, where we have come from, and where we are going. Just ask our neighbors. People still come to Butte Falls. Why? Perhaps it's the town's rich history, the snow-capped mountains and natural beauty. Maybe it's the fine quality and abundance of water or the fish and wildlife. For some, it may be the wonderland of flowers, trees, and sweet singing birds. For many, it's a place to get away from the noise and hectic city life, and a wonderful place to raise a family. It's the perfect place to recreate. For some, it's all of these and more. Thank you for joining the Big Butte Historical Society on this journey into our town's past. And as for the future, it holds answers to more questions than we yet know how to ask.